To our gorgeous and energetic instructor, Mr. Rotter Binan, and to my beautiful and handsome classmates, ladies and gentlemen, good day to all of us. We are the Group 14 reporters, and the title of our report is all about Albert Bandura's social learning theory. By the way, I am Tampos Catherine with my fellow reporters, Miss Saison Renise and Miss Ningalska Alzen. So, who is Albert Bandura? Albert Bandura, born on December 4, 1925 in Canadian American. Studied at University of British Columbia and University of Iowa. Researched and taught at Stanford University. Elected President of American Psychological Association in 1974. The famous for research on social learning theories. So, si Albert Bandura ang pinaka-famous nga research all about social learning theories. Most learning is gained by people's perceptions and thinking about what they experience. They learn by copying the examples of others around them. By Albert Bandura's. So, what is social learning theory all about? So, let's talk about these introductions. So, the introduction. Social learning theory emphasizes on the importance of observing, modeling, and the behaviors, attitudes, and emotional reactions of others. Social learning theory focuses on the learning that occurs within a social context. He stressed the importance of observational learning, imitations, and modeling. So, in this case, social learning theory proposed by Albert Bandura emphasizes the importance of observing, modeling, imitating the behaviors, attitudes, and emotional reactions of others. Social learning theory considers how both environment and cognitive factors interact to influence human learning and behavior. So, social learning theory is a theory of learning process and a social behavior which proposes that new behaviors can be acquired by observing and imitating others. In addition to the observations of behavior, learning also occurs through observations of rewards and punishments, a process known as vicarious reinforcements. So, when a particular behavior is rewarded regularly, it will most likely persist conversely. If a particular behavior is constantly punished, it will most likely desist. So, as a background and psychological reinforcements, it is a means to recognize and reward desirable behavior in hopes that such behavior will be repeated. Meanwhile, vicarious reinforcements is people's tendency to imitate behaviors for which they have seen on others being rewarded. So, vicarious reinforcements is the imitating others' behaviors for having or seen on others in order to be rewarded. Example, a child eats all of his lunch in order to get dessert because he saw his older brother eat the entire meal and was given a dessert. So, these examples emphasizes that a child also want to eat his entire meal to get a dessert. So, he imitate his older brother also to eat the entire meal in order she was rewarded with a dessert. So that is the examples of vicarious reinforcements. Another example is a student answers the teacher's questions because he saw one student praised by the teachers for doing it. So the student imitate the one student also to answer the questions properly in order the teacher will praising him or her. So the student imitating the other students in order the teachers also praise him. So in that case, students imitate other students. So that is what we call the vicarious reinforcements. I repeat, vicarious reinforcements is people's tendency to imitate behaviors for which they have seen on others being rewarded. So he or she or peoples imitate others in order to get a reward. That is what we call vicarious reinforcements. So, let's continue. What are the basic social learning concepts? There are 3 basic social learning concepts. Number 1 is observational learning. People can learn through observations. Number 2 is intrinsic reinforcements. Mental states are important for learning. And number 3 is the modeling process. Learning does not lead to a change in behavior. So, let's talk this one by one. Okay. So, let's talk about the observational learning. Learning through observation, the live model, the verbal instructional model, and a symbolic model. So, Bandura is famous for his studies of children observing adults who acted aggressively toward a doll. After the children viewed this behavior, they were given dolls to play with. Can you guess how they interact with the dolls? You're right. They imitate the aggressive actions that they observed earlier. So, a doll is a live model, involves an actual individuals demonstrating or acting out a behavior. So, a doll imitate by a children imitate the aggressive actions. So, children learn the aggressive actions given by the doll. So, children imitate the doll. But Bandura taught the meaning of observations even further in addition to a live model. He explored a verbal instructional model. Involves descriptions and explanations of behaviors. Then learning was enhanced this verbal instructional model. I am sure that you can think of an example of this when someone patiently explains something to you in a way that helps you to learn it. That's the perfect examples of a verbal instructional model. So, in this verbal instructional model involves this descriptions and explanations of a behavior. Example, a teacher. A teacher explains you something more about the topic or the discussions you tackled, your explanations. The teachers explained you some descriptions about the topic you've discussed. So the teacher is a verbal instructional model that give the descriptions in order to learn the students. That is what we call the verbal instructional model. So he also studied the symbolic model. Symbolic models were characteristic fiction and non-fiction in movies, television programs, online media, and books could lead to learning. This means that students could learn from watching a movie or television program, listening in a number of online media sources, or from reading a book. They inventions how the characters react and how they felt. This in turn taught them how to react and feel in similar life situation. So, this symbolic model, which involves real or fictional characteristics, displaying behaviors in books, films, televisions, program, or online. So, students or peoples or audience learn through watching a movie or a program in a online media or any sources like books or etc. So This model is through watching, so you can learn through watching a program or any sources. That is what we call a symbolic model. I repeat, a live model involves an actual individual demonstrating or acting out a behavior. A verbal instructional model involves descriptions and explanations of behavior. And a symbolic model, which involves real or fictional characteristics displaying behaviors in books, films, televisions, or online media. So let's continue with the intrinsic reinforcements, or mental states are important to learning. Intrinsic reinforcement is a form of internal reward such as pride, satisfactions, and a sense of accomplishments. So, Bandura noted that external environment reinforcement was not the only factor to influence learning and behaviors. He describes intrinsic reinforcements as a form of internal reward such as pride, satisfactions, and a sense of accomplishments. This emphasis on internal thoughts and cognitions help connect learning theories to cognitive development theories, while many textbooks place social learning theory with behavioral theories. Banduras himself described his approach to a social cognitive theory. Learning does not necessarily lead to change. So, how do we determine when something has been learned? In many cases, learning can be seen immediately when the new behavior is displayed. When you teach a child to ride a bicycle, you can quickly determine if learning has occurred by having the child ride his or her bike unassisted. But sometimes, we are able to learn things even though that learning might not be immediately obvious, while behaviorists believe that learning leads to a permanent change in behavior. Observational learning demonstrates that people can learn new information without demonstrating new behavior. So, this intrinsic reinforcement talks about that mental states are important to learning. So, let's continue the modeling process. The modeling process is not all observed behaviors are effectively learned. Factors involving both the model and the learner can play a role in whether social learning is successful. Bandura described specific steps in the process of modeling that must be followed by learning to be successful, which is the attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. Then you must be able to perform the behavior that you observed and committed. So, the following steps are the attention, retention, and the motor reproduction and motivation. I repeat, the modeling process have 4 steps, which is the attentions, retentions, motor reproductions, and motivations. And then you must be able to perform the behavior that you observe and committed to memory. This is reproductions. Finally, you must have the motivation. So, let's discuss the first steps, which is attention. Attention. In order to learn, you need be paying attentions. Anything that distracts your attention is going to have a negative effect on observational learning. If the model interesting, if there is a novel aspects to the situations, you are far more likely to dedicate your full attention to learning. So, you have paying your attentions in order to learn. Example, during the discussions, if you're not paying attention with the discussions of your teachers, you do not understand what the teachers talking all about. During the quiz or during the examinations, you cannot get the perfect score or the higher score with the discussions of the teachers because you do not paying attention and you cannot understand it. So you must need the attention or paying the attention in order to get the learning, in order to get the knowledge of the persons who give you. Next is the retention. Retention is the ability to store information. Is also an important part of the learning process. Retention can be affected by the number of factors, but the ability to pull up information later and act on it is vital to observational learning. So, retention, the fact of keeping something in one's memory. So, if you learn, so we must keep it and use it. So, if nakabalot ta, dapat ato po nang isulod sa atong utok. Dili lang atong ipagawa sa ato ang hunahuna. So, retention is very important. If we learn, we must keep it and use it. So, the motor reproductions and motivations will discuss by Miss Renisa Saison. And that's all of my report. Thank you and have a good day.
I am the second reporter and my name is Renisa Saison. And I will continue the report of Ms. Catherine Tampos, which is about the modeling process of social learning theories by BANDURA'S. And then I will continue the steps are involved in the observational learning and modeling process, which is the third steps, the motor reproduction. Motor reproduction, this is the ability to perform the behavior that the model has just demonstrated. Like to be able to imitate, but this not always possible. Actually, we are limited by our own physical ability. And for that reason, even if we wish to reproduce the behavior, we cannot. This influences our decisions whether to try and imitate it or not. The next is motivation. Motivation, the will to perform the behavior, the reward and punishment that follows a behavior will be considered by observer. If the perceived rewards outweigh the perceived cost, then the behavior will be more likely to be imitated by the observer. And if the very cost reinforcement is not seen to be important enough to the observer, then they will not imitate the behavior, and that is motivation. Look at the presented pictures of the first, which is the third step of the following step modeling process. That is the reproduction presented pictures. And the next is motivation. The next is talks about the principles of social learning theory. First, people can learn by observing the behavior of others and the outcomes of those behaviors. Yes, through observing the behaviors of others and the outcomes of those behaviors, we can consider that and prove ourselves that we learn to observe and apply it in the right way. The next is learning can occur without a change in behavior. Behaviorists say that learning has to be represented by a permanent change in behavior. In contrast, social learning theories say that because people can learn through observation alone, their learning may not necessarily be shown in their performance. Learning may or may not result in a behavior change, but in other words, or in short, we can observe, imitate, or model something, but we might not learn it. The next is cognition plays a role in learning. Over the last 30 years, social learning theory has become increasingly cognitive in its expectations of future reinforcement or punishment can have a major effect on the behaviors that people exhibit. One of the examples of this is asking students to reflect on their own experience. The next is social learning perspective of reinforcement and punishment. Number 1. SLT proposes that both reinforcement and punishment have indirect effects on the learning. They are not the sole or main cause because it focuses on how mental factors are involved in learning. Second is reinforcement and punishment influence the extent to which an individual exhibits a behavior that has been learned. That means reinforcement are increasingly the behavior, and while the punishment, it has found that one of the most effective ways to increase. And actually, many individual behaviors can learn from others. The next is the expectation of reinforcement influences cognitive processes that promote learning. Therefore, attention plays a critical role in learning, and attention is influenced by the expectations of reinforcement. One of the example of this is where the teacher tells a group of students that what they will study next is not on the test. A student will not pay attention because, of course, they do not expect that to know the information for a test. Just same like a surprise. The next is cognitive factors in social learning. Learning without performance. Actually, we learn without actions, and it seems like attentions. Actually, we only focus our attentions but without actions. So, we learn through observe. Same like that. The next is cognitive processing during learning. Of course, in the first step of studying the process of cognitive learning, you will be able to learn or study the first process the brain takes to learn and try to figure out how the brain perceives, because it was about the processing of cognitive learning. So, the attentions will be included. And it is important that student attention be focused on elements in the environment that are relevant to learning and filter out irrelevant elements. The next is expectations. Expectations, this is believing something that is going to happen or believing that should be a certain way. One of the example of this is you believe that you will be getting promoted but you are not. You only show the expectations for yourself but still you cannot get at. Next is reciprocal causation. Reciprocal causations. This is two or more events have simultaneously cause effects upon each other. One of the example of this is car accidents, where two cars collide frontally because of the reaction of each conductor to the action of other conductor. So, the two cars driving in opposite directions. Another example is child acts out because they don't like the school. So, the result of the teachers will be reprimandary the child, which may cause the child. The next is modeling. Modeling actually is that known because fortunately most human behavior is learned observationally through modeling. From observing others, one forms an ideas on how new behaviors are performed, and on later occasions, this coded information serves as guide for actions. That is modeling. Next is the presented research experiments of Bubudal. Bubu the Clown. First is boys and girls watch a video of a person performing violent acts on a blow-up clown named Bobo. Use of kicking, punching, and hammering were modeled. So that is research experiments of Bubudal and clown. The next is when children were then left alone with the same blow-up clown, they performed the same behaviors they had observed. So the children will be playing. The next is watch Bandura and Bobo experiment, and that is one of the tensions will be explained this now. Actually, this research experiments from Bubudal is an implantable toy that is approximately the same size as a presubstant child. And then the aim of Bandura's experiments was demonstrate that if children were witnesses to an aggression display by adult, they would imitate this aggressive behavior when given the opportunity. And also, it is very important because it is demonstrated that children are able to learn social behavior such as aggression through the process of observation learning and through watching the behavior of another person. And according to Bandura's social learning theory, learning occurs through observation and interactions with other people. That's why this research experiments was presented of this theory, because is that very related on each other. And then here's the pictures presented, and what I look of this is that having challenges to widely accept behaviors, views that rewards and punishment are essential to learning. And also because of this presented videos, Bandura suggested that people could learn by observing and imitating others' behavior. And if somebody want to learn more, we have presented video links about Bubudal experiments, and you are very free to watch it in YouTube. And here's the link. Thank you, and I will turn it. Next reporter will be Aljening Gasca.
Have a good day, everyone, especially to you, sir. This day, I continue the report of Miss Renisa Munding Saison, which I tackled about 3 concepts of the social learning theory. By the way, I am Alza Ningasca, so let's tackle about the 3 concepts social learning theory. First, people can learn through observation. According to Bandura asserts that most human behavior is learned through observation, imitation, and modeling. Learning through observation are one of the best known experiments in the history of psychology involve a doll named Bubu. Bandura demonstrated that children learn and imitate behaviors they have observed in other people. The children in Bandura's studies observed an adult acting violently toward a Bubu doll. When the children were later allowed to play in a room with the Bubu doll, they began to imitate the aggressive actions they had previously observed. Bandura identified 3 basic models of observational learning, which are the live model, symbolic model, and the verbal instructional model, which we can learn by watching others and then imitating or modeling what they do and say. The individuals performing the imitated behavior are called models. As we can see, observational learning does not even necessarily require watching another person to engage in an activity. Hearing verbal instructions, such as listening to a podcast, can lead to learning. We can also learn by reading, hearing, or watching the actions of characters in books and films. But in some of the observation has the lightning rod for controversy as parents and psychologists debate the impact that pop culture's media has on kids. Many worry that kids can learn bad behavior such as aggression from violent video games, movies, television programs, and online videos. Many behaviors can be learned, at least partly, through modeling examples that can be cited are that students can watch parents read, students can watch the demonstration of mathematics problems or see someone acting bravely in a fearful situation. Aggression can be learned through models. Much research indicate that children become more aggressive when they observe aggressive or violent models. Moral thinking and moral behaviors are influenced by observation and modeling. This includes moral judgment regarding right and wrong, which can be in part developed through modeling. The second is internal mental state. It is essential a learning process. Mental states are important to learning. Bandura described intrinsic reinforcement as a form of internal rewards, such as pride, satisfaction, and a sense of accomplishment. Bandura noted that external environment reinforcement was not the only factor to influence learning and behavior, and he realized that reinforcement does not always come from outside sources. Your own mental states and motivation play an important role in determining whether a behavior is learned or not. He described intrinsic reinforcement as a form of internal rewards. This emphasis on internal thoughts and cognitions help connect learning theories to cognitive developmental theories. While many textbooks place social learning theory with behavioral theories, Bandura himself described his approach as a social cognitive theory. The last one is the learning does not necessarily need to change in behavior. So, how we determine when something has been learned? In many cases, learning can be seen immediately when the new behavior is displayed. As what Tampo said, that when you teach a child to ride bicycle, you can quickly determine if learning has occurred by having the child ride his or her bike unassisted. But sometimes we are able to learn things even though that learning might not be immediately of use. While behaviorists believe that learning leads to a permanent change in behavior, observational learning demonstrates that people can learn new information without demonstrating new behaviors. So, let's proceed to the next topic. What do teachers do under this theory? To promote effective modeling, a teacher must take sure that four essential conditions exist, which are the attention, retention, motor reproduction, and the motivation. These four steps are essential to promote effective, especially to a teacher. Modeling provides an alternative to shaping for teaching new behaviors. Instead, using shaping, which is operant conditioning, modeling can provide a faster, more efficient means for teaching new behavior. To promote effective modeling, a teacher must make sure that the four essential conditions exist, which are the attention, retention, motor reproduction, and motivation. Teachers and parents must model appropriate behaviors and take care that they do not model inappropriate behaviors. So teachers should expose students to a variety of other models. This technique is very important to break down traditional stereotypes. Teachers should help students set realistic expectations for their academic accomplishment. In general, in teacher class means making sure that expectations are not set too low. Should realistically challenge the students, so teachers use positive role model to increase desired behaviors and thus change the culture of a school. Not only when individual students benefit from positive role models in and out of the classroom, but the entire class and the student body will do so. Encouraging children and building self-efficacy are rooted in social learning theory. Example, if a teacher is positive with their students and they encourage them, this positive energy and verbal encouragement in turn help build self-efficacy, the beliefs in one's abilities to succeed in various situations. So, next is, what do students do under this theory? First is, students often learn a great deal simply by observing other people. Number 2 is, students must believe that they are capable of accomplishing school's tasks. Number 3 is, students should closely observe appropriate behaviors and learn from them. Bandura found that the students' self-efficacy impact on how their tasks, goals, and challenges are approached. Those individuals with strong self-efficacy view challenges as tasks to master, develop deep interest in the activities they participate in, form a strong sense of commitment to activities and interests, and bounce back from disappointments and setback easily. Furthermore, Bandura states that learning every single thing from personal experience is hard and could be potentially dangerous. He claims that much of a student's life is rooted in social experiences, thus observing others is naturally advantageous to gaining knowledge and skills. And the last topic was all about applying Bandura's theory in the classroom. First, carefully select audiovisuals that are to be used in the classroom. Second, create a sense of collective efficacy by emphasizing teamwork. Third is, set goals for students to accomplish. Have them keep a record of these accomplishments. Once a month, take the record out and celebrate their hard work. And the last one is, incorporate technology by putting the students' challenges and accomplishments online on the class website so they can show their friends and family. So, there is an example of applying Bandura's theory in the classroom. Teacher will be a role model by not letting students turn in their work past the due date, reinforce the importance of responsibility. The students can learn that they are held to this standard and they should hold it for all of their work. Group work is another way that teacher will apply Bandura's social learning theory. Having teacher choose the groups can allow for a variety of students in each to be diverse. If there is a good student who is motivated and responsible and a student who does not care about school in the same group, then according to Bandura, they will imitate each other. With these students in the same group, teacher would hope that the better students will be able to influence the other student, imitate while acquire responsibility and motivation. So teacher can help this, making sure all members of the group need to participate. Being a passionate teacher can help spread their passion to the student as well. So just like in the classroom, that we can do activities that students do not only imitate each other but also the teacher. Being a good role model, open all the students and holding the students to a level of responsibility will be imitated by the students according to Bandura. Bandura social learning theory using Bandura social learning theory in the classroom can help students reach their potential. Students do not only imitate each other but also the teacher. Being a good role model, open to all the students and holding the students to a level of responsibility will be imitated by the students according to Bandura. Furthermore, learning would be exceedingly laborious, not to mention hazardous, if people had to rely solely on the effects of their own actions to inform them what to do. Fortunately, most human behavior is learned observationally through modeling. From observing others, one forms an idea of how new behaviors are performed, and on later occasions, this coded information serves as a guide for action, according to Albert Bandura's social learning theory. And that's all about my report, sir, and thank you for listening. And that's all of our report. Thank you for listening, and God bless everyone.